right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for coming out. Again, as introduced, I'm a research scientist at Autodesk's Pier 9 facility, so I do a lot of work with digital fabrication, 3D printing, and looking at how we can use it strategically, use it in ways that actually make sense. And particularly, we've been looking at how we can combine a lot of these new design, manufacturing, and enabling technologies in new ways. So today we're going to talk about combining one of the world's oldest manufacturing technologies with one of the world's newest design technologies, generative design, optimization. And generative design and optimization have typically been discussed kind of in detail with their relationship with existing modern manufacturing technologies like additive, like 3D printing. And so they have a slightly complicated relationship. They're intricately interwoven. But I think it's important to look at these advanced manufacturing techniques like additive to understand a little bit about what exactly we're using them for. Why are we using additive? Why are we using it in these capacities? How is it generating value? What problems is it actually solving for us? And so over the past few years at Autodesk, we've talked with hundreds of people who are using additive in interesting ways, primarily Metal Additive when we're looking at generative design. And chiefly they're using it for things like part consolidation, so collapsing complex assemblies into single geometries. They're working on making just very complex things that might not be economical to make with existing manufacturing technologies. They're looking at things that just are purely impossible with conventional manufacturing techniques like CNC and molding. But there's another kind of interesting opportunity around replacement parts, on-demand manufacturing, short-run manufacturing, kind of manufacturing agility. And so if we kind of step back a little bit, we can really break this down into the kind of two mechanisms here generating value. There is a series of mechanisms centered around design, using additive to realize form. And then there's using additive to solve logistics challenges, basically using it as a very nimble digital fabrication technology. But what's truly unique here is that additive can enable a vast new variety of design, of form, of topologies that we've never really been able to make before. And if we kind of contextualize where we've been as, a species designing things for millennia, we've really operated within this narrow bands of familiar, naturally occurring materials. So if we kind of lay them out on this strength to weight grid here, we've really only worked up and down the middle there. But what's exciting is a lot of our new design technology is letting us unlock totally new territory. Things like a lot of the advanced lattice capabilities that we've been developing over the past several years let us actually unlock totally new mechanical and structural properties from familiar materials. And additive is this incredibly powerful tool that lets us reach into that space. But there's some challenges. Additive has some drawbacks in addition to some very unique strengths. It has constraints just like any other manufacturing technology. So there's some things that additive can't do as well. Specifically, additive is very expensive. It is, for most parts that we make conventionally, it's actually more expensive to make them additively. So we have to be very careful in what problems we actually address and solve with additive. Currently, there's quite a small material portfolio that we're working with within additive. You're typically limited to half a dozen, maybe a dozen materials if you're working with metal printing. And there's some very firm size limitations in terms of the size of the parts that you can make. So we'll hear some more about some very exciting new technologies in additive, really cutting edge stuff that Tim will be talking about momentarily. But probably one of the other very interesting challenges here, particularly in aerospace and medical, is that we still don't know the long-term performance of parts made additively. We don't know how they fatigue, how they perform after 10,000 cycles, 1 million cycles, 10 million cycles. So there are a lot of challenges there. So what we've been looking at Autodesk recently is looking for technologies, other manufacturing technologies that we could maybe combine with additive and generative that maybe address some of these shortcomings that we currently see with additive. So something that might have a broader portfolio of materials to work with, that's maybe a qualified process that's already widely in use. Something that can maybe make big parts, complex parts. And this exploration led us to metal casting. This technology is 5,000 years old. That's a significant fraction of just human history in general. The first cast parts, I think, were in China in several thousand BC. So it's a technology that's been around for a while, and it's still in use. We all flew here on planes whose engines are largely constructed from cast parts in the hot stage of those turbines. So, and in general, we're almost never less than 10 feet away from casting. So it's a very established industry. It's very well understood. It has a huge portfolio of materials, and it can make very, very big parts. So we like to learn by doing at Autodesk. So I worked with my colleague Andy Harris, who's here in the audience. So Andy, I've been investigating kind of opportunities for lightweighting in aerospace applications. He has a background in aerospace, works on our advanced consulting team, so has a lot of insight into the opportunities in that space. And so we identified airplane seat frames, so basically the structure that holds the seat onto the deck of the aircraft. It's an interesting candidate for lightweighting. And so we used some of our advanced lattice optimization tools to actually design this adaptive lattice lightweighted seat frame. And then the challenge was, well, how do we actually make this? So this is where we decided to start with a very challenging geometry, something that didn't fit in metal printers, that was an aerospace application, and look at how we could maybe make this with metal casting. So I'm going to talk about a very specific casting process, investment casting, and show you the whole process in what I hope is appropriate levels of detail. And I'll use a food metaphor, which are often the easiest ways to understand processes. Investment casting is often called lost wax casting, so it's a sacrificial mold process. The way I like to think about it is it's very similar to making a Klondike bar. So you've got ice cream on the center and you've got a chocolate shell on the outside. The first step in making an investment casting is you make what's called your pattern. You make a positive, reproduction of the end part that you're going to make, but you make it out of a sacrificial material. So when making a Klondike bar, you start with a block of ice cream. We make that pattern using a 3D printing technology. This is a powder bed binder jetting process in which we're basically using inkjet heads and a specialized glue in a machine called a voxel jet machine to glue together these very small particles of material to build up that structure. And what's really nice is, as an additive technology, we get to capitalize on all of that geometric flexibility, but it's plastic, so it's always going to be faster and cheaper than a metal printing technology. The next step is we take that pattern, we mount it to a piece of wax called a tree, and then we dip it in this ceramic slurry. So it's equivalent to taking that piece of ice cream, dipping it in chocolate. What we're going to do is we're going to repeat that process several times to build up a layer of ceramic shell. What we're doing is we're building a mold. After we dip the first time in that ceramic slurry, so after we dip in the chocolate, we then give it a backing coating of sand, where it's just basically applying sprinkles. That helps us build up a structural coating that will withstand the later higher temperatures that this is going to see. Once we've built up a sufficiently thick coating on that pattern, we then throw the whole assembly, so the ceramic jacketing the plastic or the wax, into a very high temperature furnace. And what we're seeing here is that material inside the ceramic shell being vaporized. But what it leaves behind is a perfect impression of what that positive was. So what we've done here is we've created a perfect custom mold for that geometry. So if we're going back to the Klondike bar metaphor, what we've done is we've made that Klondike bar and then we've left it on the counter. All the ice cream, which has a lower melting temperature, is melted out, and we're left behind with a hollow chocolate shell. And so now we can put another flavor of ice cream in, namely magnesium. So magnesium is a really interesting metal that can't currently be printed yet. It's a little bit problematic to print it in that it's flammable when it has a very high surface area. But we're able to pour it into this ceramic shell, working with this foundry in Michigan called Aristocast, who has a lot of expertise in working with this material. So after you fill that shell and let that material solidify, you then basically use high velocity abrasive media, basically a sand blaster, a bead blaster, or a water jet, to basically abrade away that ceramic shell. So you're chipping away that chocolate shell, revealing the magnesium seat frame inside. And so what was really interesting is we're actually able to do something that had never really been done before. We made a relatively large scale, and you can come and see this in the exhibit hall. We have a couple of these around in the Future of Making Things experience exhibit. So we're actually able to make this part and make a type of part, a level of complexity that really hadn't been achieved before, at a scale that hadn't been achieved before. And one of my favorite things about this is we were able to achieve really dramatic weight savings, over 50% weight reduction. And what's really interesting is that Andy's lattice optimization reduced the weight by about 25%. So from the design side, we reduced weight a significant fraction. And then from the manufacturing process, the fact that we were able to use this alloy that can't yet be 3D printed, we're able to reduce that another 25%. So both the design and the manufacturing technology work together to double the weight savings that were previously possible. And if we take this seat frame and actually look at, what would this look like in use? What if we actually put this on passenger aircraft? We looked at Airbus A380, so some of the biggest passenger aircraft in the world. They hold about 600 people at maximum capacity. And we looked at a kind of a typical large fleet, say 100 aircraft. So over the lifetime of those aircraft, about 20 years in service, this would end up saving as much carbon as taking 80,000 cars off the road and save about $200 million in fuel costs for that airline operating those. So the thing I'd like to leave everybody with is, we've often been kind of thinking about generative design and additive as using additive for that end part manufacturing as the kind of the only way to make that part. But I'd encourage everybody who's interested in kind of exploring these new technologies is also think about and explore how additive can be used in a supporting role, as an enabling role, as a catalyst to empower a much more established, mature technology, because a lot of really interesting things are possible with that.